Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Talent Community Podcast. I am your host today, Yasar Ahmad, Community Manager at the Talent Community and Global Vice President at HelloFresh. The Talent Community is the go-to space for over 14,000 leaders, HR innovators, and talent strategists who want to stay ahead of the curve. You can join for free by going to thetalentcommunity.net. Now, today's guest is someone I had the absolute privilege of working with at Zalando, and honestly, she is one of those people whose leadership just sticks with you. Not only is she brilliant, insightful, and incredibly strategic, but she's also the kind of leader who knows how to make people feel heard, supported, and inspired. She's currently the Senior Vice President of People and Organization at Flix, where she leads the global HR function. In the past, she's led multiple digital transformations, spearheading organizations through IPOs, restructurings, and large-scale transformations. But beyond her professional accolades, she also has a touch of internet fame. Well, not exactly her, but her dog, Henry the Sausage Dog, who might just be giving some influencers a run for their money on Instagram. I mean, let's be real. How many HR leaders have a canine sidekick and more followers than most of us? So without further ado, please welcome to the show, Dorit Schindler. Welcome, Dorit. How are you doing?
Thank you very much. How can I do after such an introduction? Thank you so much, Yasar, for your kind words and also for your appreciation of the sausage. He's actually laying next to me, supporting this episode and supporting me. So as you rightfully say, every good HR leader needs a furry friend to cheer them in the back.
It's true. I'm going to jump straight into the conversation. We had a brief conversation just before this, but I want to talk about leadership at scale. You've led, obviously, you're leading the people and organization function at Flix on a global scale, which is obviously no small task. There's a saying that really sticks with me. Leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about asking the right questions and listening deeply. I've got a question for you. So how do you ensure that across such a large organization, the leadership team stays connected to what employees really need?
Yeah, it's indeed a really good question, and also keeping me busy with trying to connect. Maybe I give some context. The people and talent community at Flix, we have around 80 colleagues working from India, Europe, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, Southern Europe, but also the UK, the US, Latin America. We have colleagues sitting in Brazil and Mexico. So it's a quite intercultural community of people, and they are located everywhere in the world, which is amazing. And keeping them together. I mean, we have a couple of formats, which I think was probably be quite common. But what we regularly do is we budget for personal travel as well. So our subgroups travel and they meet personally, the talent community, talent acquisition community, people partner community. They meet regularly on site. And we also do have an annual people off site, which we really enjoy for a couple of days where everyone joins in person. For sure, I mean, there are budget restrictions. We cannot do that all the time, but we have regular formats every 6 weeks, people all hands. And we do have a very strong HR senior leadership team and an extended leadership team so that we can cascade communication and messages upwards and downwards. But there's always also an open door, an open voice, an open ear, as you said in your introduction. It's really close to my heart to try to be as close to the people as possible. We recently introduced a kudos channel where we can call out each other for nice things or for things which just have happened in the communities in different countries. And we really try to also encourage our extended leadership team because we're going through a larger transformation, and communication, staying connected and appreciating each other is even more important than in stable environments.
I think, if I remember correctly, I think it was yourself who introduced me to Gallup Strength Finder. I think so. You're a certified coach in Gallup Strength Finder. Yes, yeah. And I remember doing that Strength Finder and finding out like so much about myself, what my strengths are, and obviously some of the areas that I need to focus on. And I guess it links to my second question for you because it's about culture, right? And so you just talked there about, connecting with the teams and, making sure that the leadership have all the, I guess, the support they need. We've both seen during massive transformations, culture can either be your biggest asset or it could be your greatest challenge, right? During COVID, that was one of the key things that helped Zalando grow. I love the idea that culture isn't a poster on the wall. It's a decision you make when things get tough. Um, I think I might know the answer, but how do you keep culture alive and thriving when the company is moving at such a fast pace? And I'm not just talking about Flix, I'm talking about your past experiences as well.
Yeah, culture, as you said, it's not on the poster on the wall, and sometimes it's more implicit culture. Even different functions can have different cultures, right? And sometimes you find a culture which you even want to change potentially. So keeping culture alive is one thing, but also, being role modeling a culture which you think is eventually more positive culture or strengths-based culture indeed. I think at Flix, since we are a company with only 11 years old, I think culture evolved and it's founder-led. That also has a big impact on the people. Yeah. I think talking about it and creating a situation or an environment, and it's also a little bit of a buzzword, but I think it's generally true of psychological safety, where people can speak up and they also are able to say, hey, is it eventually against our culture? This is important to listen to those things. What culture do we want to have? How do we want to work? We want to be open. We want to be friendly with each other, but we also want to call out if things go wrong. And currently we are training that muscle a little bit. There's also this culture of disagree and commit and saying or addressing things which might not be working and which we can improve. But this is something we need to talk about, and you need to be explicit also what you expect, because everyone comes from a different background. As you said, I've seen many companies, and in companies it's different, and you bring your back of experiences, and then you enter a new company, and then culture is different. So you need to adopt. Onboarding is important, role modeling is important, but also talking about it is important. And I think our Kudos channel is a very pragmatic, very little tiny tool where you can keep this culture of positive reinforcement, strengths-based appreciation up to date. And always, we are using it quite frequently and people are posting things there. So that's a little tool, but it helps.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about politics, but I know that popularism is on the rise where, extreme views are kind of being pushed into the politics. And obviously that creeps into the workplace as well. And there's a fascinating disconnect in leadership today. I think there was a Harvard Business Review study found that 80% of leaders believe they're empathetic, but only 50% of employees agree. But there is a big empathy gap. You've led through restructurings and transformations. So how do you make sure that empathy doesn't get lost in the pressure of a big change?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because there is a lot. You need empathy, or empathy is very important. At some point in time, as a leader, leading through restructuring, and really, restructuring is one thing. I led a company through insolvency, where we closed the doors, right, literally. And then empathy can get really tricky if you're too empathetic and you start thinking about all these personal destinies of the people you have to lay off. This gives you sleepless nights, and then you can't manage yourself anymore because you're also affected, right? You're also losing your job. Everyone losing their job. So empathy, I think, is a very, very important one, but also you need to find the way to deal with it in a way that you can say, okay, I go until here, but then I also need to do a little bit of self-care for me as a leader, because otherwise it's too much of empathy. So finding this fine line, but what I always do, and no matter what kind of situations, I always try to remind myself in starting every conversation, every one-on-one and every team meeting, and asking, how are you? And like the maybe German or European way of asking, how are you? Not like, how are you? Hello. The American way, I'm not really interested, but I ask you, how are you? But how are you? And stopping. And this, if you really stop after asking, how are you? You get this, at least you hear how people are. Can you always solve it? Can you always help? Maybe not. So you have to take care of what you take on your shoulders. But having an open ear and trying to put yourself in the shoes of the affected people, or people struggling with change, or maybe are a little bit behind the change curve or on front of the change curve. So really trying to put yourself in the shoes or on the chair of your partner you're talking to.
Yeah, it's a tough one for sure. I think there's also a balance of you as an individual. I think a lot of people are very like, unless you're curing cancer, it can get very people take sometimes the role or the decisions very seriously. Obviously it affects them, it affects their salaries and everything. But during the work day, I always say this to people. I say, in my company, whether it was a Zalando or Wipro or HelloFresh, I always said, we sell stuff. We're not curing cancer, but don't get too upset about something going wrong. Yes, you're a passionate individual, but we can work through this, right? It's not the end of the world. I want to shift the conversation slightly to more around 2025 and beyond, because I think this is an important topic for us, given the introduction of agentic AI and loads of other things that are going on in terms of the AI world, efficiencies and whatnot. The World Economic Forum recently highlighted that the half-life of skills is now less than 5 years, meaning that skills we rely on today could be outdated by 2030. So how do you approach reskilling and upskilling at your current company, your previous companies, and how do you keep up with the pace of shift and avoid falling into the trap of just kind of chasing latest trends?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I think I'm generally very curious and very, very interested. So give me something to read or something to scroll through. I do that, and I get inspired very, very easily and very quickly. So I think generally I have luckily also inherited by my dad this tech interest, or like always trying to stay up to date and never say, I will not try it, but I'm usually on the forefront of trying things. Talking to the teams, I have worked the past 10 years at least in companies where people usually joined those kind of companies because they were very innovative, very fast, and you create a culture of people who have this a bit more in their DNA than previous companies I worked for, more traditional companies where it might take a little bit longer. I think getting excited, seeing the positive things, but also never stop learning and always trying to stay on top and try to learn what is the latest thing. Luckily, I have a big family with a lot of young kids around me. I'm an aunt of 8 nephews and nieces and 11 grandnephews and grandnieces, and I usually download all these apps they're using, whether it is a TikTok or anything else. So I try to keep up to date through the young people around me, that I never lose something. Sometimes I'm not really getting it, but I try. But upskilling for our own function is important. I think I'm particularly for not only talent acquisition, but also for generally the people function, what is possible with AI. And I think we are, at least here in Central Europe, we are quite far behind the curve of what's possible. And I have the feeling, when you ask about 2025, tech, digitalization, automation, and scalability is on top of our agenda. It's one of our 3 priorities for this year. I mean, we're using Workday, we're using Greenhouse, and have worked with other big software or HR enterprise software in the past. But I think there are even smaller, fast-scale tools out there which are fun to work with and which can create a lot of efficiency.
Yeah, you've, I guess, segueing on to that question, you've managed teams for a long time. And there's a saying, change is inevitable, growth is optional. And I got a question, because I sometimes struggle with this myself. How do you personally, like for your teams, ensure that your teams choose growth rather than just reacting to change? So changing their mindset, so to speak, to kind of be more proactive with growth as opposed and change than just kind of, oh, it's not my job right now kind of thing, right? Yeah. That happens a lot to us. What's your view on that?
Yeah. I mean, there is a model out there. It's called the ADGAR model from ProSci. It's a model how you lead people through change, and it's very true. And I will never forget it because it's so valid. I mean, you usually ADGAR stands for its abbreviations. It stands for awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. And I think you sometimes in change processes we jump too quickly into the solution, and we are explaining people why we're doing it, and then we just do it once, and then we expect them to change. But what we lose out on is to repeat it more often. You have to repeat it 5 to 9 times from different angles. And if I, as an SVP HR, I tell the people what they have to do, they might follow or not. They hear it once in the people on site. But what they're really interested in is, what is my team lead saying? What is my direct peer saying? How are they reacting to that change? And if you take a little bit more time in the beginning of getting them on the journey, having this insight of why we are changing and what's potentially in it for me, then it's a bit easier. And oftentimes we jump too quickly into like new org charts and new process descriptions before we have really described why. You could use pictures, metaphors. I mean, here in my current job, we use the metaphor of an unfinished symphony, like playing like an orchestra. And there's even a symphony out there from Schubert, which is unfinished. And we have listened in our people offsite to this classical concert of this unfinished symphony. And ever since then, we take it as an analogy, saying we in the people team, we are like an orchestra. We have the violins, we have the trumpets, and so on. And we have to play with each other. And we have to know our roles, responsibilities, and know our like notes, and have a good tech setup that we can finish the symphony. And I think pictures sometimes help. Now, if you have a picture, you have a vision, and you know where you're getting to. But it takes time. Yeah. That's true. And maybe not everyone is on board, and that's also fine, right? I mean, maybe you cannot get 100% on the boat, but that's good. On the bus, as we would say. But that's good. Yeah, that's okay.
Oh, no, that's great. I love that. And it's true. Yeah, I think that's the last part especially is true. Not everybody is going to be on board, and that's fine. You know, in that, with that in mind, high pressure environments and situations. I know that you talked a bit about this, like leading an IPO or restructuring or solvency. Those require quick decision making, but also thoughtful, data driven, I'm sure, instinctual, or maybe a mix. But has there ever been a time when your gut told you to go against the data, or vice versa? Or like, what's your traditional decision making? I asked you like 4 questions. I'm really sorry. Maybe the first question is
pressure, so we can test it. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Good. Has there been any time when your gut told you to go against the data?
Not really. I mean, we have in several companies, we often have interesting conversations about diversity and diversity data, but it doesn't mean that we go against the data, right? We take the data, and then sometimes there's not much you can do because you do not have open vacancies, or it's really difficult to find this gender diverse managing director in a certain profession, if it's maybe more tech or automotive. So that sometimes is data which you try using, but at the end, you can't really do something with it because it's so hard to move the needle, because you really need to change the talent structure of the company. It takes longer. But I wouldn't say it was against the data. Indeed, I mean, dealing with pressure, data always helps, and that you can follow up on progress. I think that's most important in these situations, right? That you also have a good plan. Think about the plan first, do the first steps, and then always check on data. Are we going in the right direction, or are we maybe going in the wrong direction? So, and by the way, the data-driven mindset, I also learned from you a lot. So you have been a real big role model for me, what you can do with data. I remember when you joined Zalando and you brought all the data into the talent acquisition team. I was so impressed. So that left obviously an impression on me.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. No, that's really, really helpful, actually. Speaking of Zalando, obviously we talked about the Gallup Strength Finder, and I know that you are a certified coach. You spend a lot of time helping others grow. You give them insights, you've trained people, you've coached people, mentored. If you had to give one coaching insight that every leader should know, what would it be?
Yeah, that's one you already mentioned at the beginning. I would really say never stop learning about yourself, like using whatever tool. StrengthsFinder is a great tool, but there are other tools out there. Learn about yourself and learn about things you're good doing and do more of those. And also learn about the things where you might have blind spots. I mean, use tools like 360 or any other test. I mean, sometimes as a leader, it gets really lonely and you depend a bit on the culture, but sometimes you don't get feedback so often. Sometimes we may also have the tendency to not accept the feedback because we think, oh, we are super great eventually, right? But if as a leader, you are still open to either the feedback you get from people or feedback you get from tools or assessments or personality tests, or ask others, can you give me some feedback on how I'm doing, even if you are already on top of your career? I think this is this one advice. Never stop learning about yourself and also stay humble. And there's always room to learn, no matter how old you are, how many companies you've seen, how big your bank account is. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Never stop learning about yourself. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you for that. On the personal side, we have to talk about Henry the sausage dog. He is obviously an icon in his own right. Beyond the Instagram fame, as a dog mom who's has been a dog mom, taught you any unexpected lessons about leadership or patience? I've heard people say, what was it? Leadership is like being a dog owner. You need patience, consistency, and sometimes you just need a good walk to clear your head. Would you agree?
Yeah. The good walk, I would definitely agree. I am a terrible dog mom. I mean, although I have to say a sausage dog is pretty stubborn. And it's I'm always telling myself the story that it's super hard to train a sausage dog. I'm sure there will be thousands of people commenting on this one because it's not true. But I think that what you do in your private life sometimes doesn't reflect what you do in your professional life. But it's good to have that dog and go out in the woods, in the forest, or go, particularly when you ask a question about stress. Sometimes when it's really getting stressful, I just leave everything and I just say, I just go and walk the dog or have a walk. Or sometimes we walk together as colleagues with the dog. That's also very nice. And what you also can learn from a dog is what they do when they are nervous or when they try to relieve stress. They shake themselves. I mean, everyone can know these dogs which shakes themselves, and that's sometimes also very helpful to get your mind free. No, I mean, to really literally. I mean, we're not shaking our heads like a dog, but just trying to unwind and to get a different perspective. No, I mean, to change the perspective. That's very helpful. That's what you can learn from a Fury friend. For sure.
Yeah. I'm not allowed a dog. My wife doesn't like dogs, unfortunately. I'm allowed cats, but no dogs. And I'm a bit gutted, but one day maybe I'll convince her. Outside of work, obviously, with and outside of Henry's ventures, how do you recharge and to stay inspired? I know a lot of leaders have their hobbies and rituals, like, but the pressure, like you said, it's quite lonely at the top, and obviously you have to try to bring your best self to work. So what kind of habits have you kind of instilled in your daily life to ensure you come your best to work?
Yeah, and by the way, this is nearly top priority, I think, for a leader to make sure that you are at your best self. Is it always possible to do it every day? Maybe not, but I think when you lead a larger team, not even smaller team, doesn't matter how many people, but you should be on top of yourself. And I think there's a couple of things I'm doing. I mean, I start my day usually with sports, with row. I row now. In summer, I go running. I do yoga, and I really try to eat healthy as I can. That's something really important. And on the weekend, and indeed, I have a hobby which is so good. It's sailing. I go sailing over the weekend, and then you can completely unwind. And it's no internet connection. You can't do anything. But you need your rituals, and I also think you need to be bold about it, and also free up the time, and not forget about how important it is. And then you recharge, and then you can be much more efficient, and then you can really use the power you get from those activities. But never compromise on sleep, on exercise, and on what you eat. I think we should always remind ourselves about that. Is it always possible? Are we always perfect? For sure not. But I think there's a lot in it, and the older we get, the more important it is. I think. Yeah.
I actually couldn't agree more. The number one leadership priority is to make sure you are I think what is the saying? Put your mask on first.
Yeah.
Put your safety mask on first. If the plane is crashing, don't focus on others. And I think that's really important, especially when it comes to mental health and just agility and just having the energy to go through the day. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. I have a question which is a bit around for the audience. And I know a lot of people listening, they'll be at different stages of their careers. And a lot of them will look at your profile and say, wow, you've really grown through the ranks, and they'll be really impressed with it, which no doubt everybody will be. But what kind of, I guess, what advice would you give to someone who wants to grow to that kind of leadership level and get there quickly? Because, a lot of I don't know what generation is, Generation Z, millennials. I don't know. Now I get confused with them, but a lot of the younger generation, they want everything now, right? So what's your advice to someone who wants to become a leader, but, is in a corporate?
Yeah, and it's sometimes true that people want a lot now. No, can you force it? Stop forcing it. I would advise. I mean, you can't really force it, but what you can do is step up. No? I mean, do what you can do in your circle of control. Get this visibility. Engage yourself. I mean, there's nothing more frustrating than people who are sitting there feeling entitled to be promoted. But there's nothing more refreshing than people stepping up, taking projects and showing themselves, right? It doesn't mean that you have to work 14 hours a day and kill yourself, but it's rather about, showing what you can. And sometimes also, I mean, in my career, indeed, it was a roller coaster. I not always took the next career step voluntarily. Sometimes things happened to me. And I think the generations now in the workforce, they have experienced. Sometimes they all experienced a layoff already, or they've experienced restructuring. Take this as an opportunity. I mean, many of my career steps also happened to me somehow without having, if you would have asked me 20 years ago, I wouldn't have planned it like it came. So be open to what comes and learn from it, and even learn from situations which might not be as you would have expected them, or if you dislike them. Take a diary, write it down, what you learn, because you can also learn from difficult and challenging situations, and don't give up too early. I would say, yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So we've run out of time now, so we'll finish up there. A huge thank you, Dorit, for joining us today. What an incredible conversation. We covered so much. I think we'll walk away with some really powerful insights, especially on how to manage at scale and manage yourself as a leader.
Thank you very much for this amazing conversation, Yasar. I really loved talking to you. It felt very natural. Thank you very much for the great questions, and I hope there was something in it for everyone who listens. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time on the Talent Community Podcast, where we bring you the sharpest minds, boldest ideas, and the conversations that matter. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe on our YouTube channel for more in-depth conversations with top industry leaders. Join the discussion by signing up for our Slack community, where talent professionals and HR innovators share ideas, challenges, and best practices in real time. And of course, make sure to follow us on LinkedIn for the latest trends, insights, and exclusive content from the talent community. Until next time, see you later.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on LinkedIn.